All right, guys, got SEC Media Days. They're well underway over in Nashville. That's the home base this year for SEC Media Days. On Monday, Brett McMurphy, the first to report that next year's SEC Media Days, and I just want to get your reaction, will be in Dallas, Texas, and we'll all have to go down to the Lone Star State.
Will Zoom options be available at that point in time? You knew this was going to happen at some point. Sure. I think that they're going to see that the attendance for that one will be outside of the Texas media. That one's going to be low. How many people from Florida or South Carolina are going to come over there when you can watch it on? You can watch it on SEC Network, and you can grab the transcript and see those things. No offense to the SEC, that event's not what it once was, where you could grab people in the hallway and do some things. It's a lot harder to get one-on-ones, and you can't follow guys from room to room like you could, years ago. And so we'll see. We'll see about Dallas, Texas, AP. You'll go because you'll find some country club down there to play, I'm sure. Something's on your list for July down there, right? I'll say this: it'll be hard to do a down and back, which is something that's been a mainstay for Volquest for the last decade or so. So we will certainly miss it not being in Nashville or Atlanta or even Hoover at that point if we got to get on an airplane and go somewhere.
Brent, it depends if AP wants to go to Dallas-Fort Worth with me in February for baseball. If he goes on that trip, then maybe he won't go to SEC Media Days. We get two opportunities next year.
Who says you're getting to go to that trip?
Ouch!
I will sell my way. I'm going to that one.
We've already sold you out, so we can send Grant to Maui for the Maui invitation.
If I was Grant, I'd push for that one hard.
So if next year, I'll just be down there in Dealey Plaza, right down there on Elm.
Forget Maui. I gotta be in Lake Como, Italy here in about 10 days, 14 days, something like that. Sorry, Hubs. All right, went ahead and purchased that one.
I've seen the cost of that. I've seen the cost of that trip for extra spectators. Grant, it's not pretty. So
hey, Grant, we'll let you go. You can't take your wife.
Hey, that price you heard, I already paid it. So you better get back in that garden when we're done recording this. Get to work.
I got a lot more beans to pick. Hurry up, Grant. We got to go.
So, with SEC Media Days coming up, Tennessee's going to take to the podium. Should be the last team that goes on the week, Thursday afternoon. Is the conversation, obviously a lot of it's going to be about the investigation wrapping up and all that, but Austin, is it going to be completely dominated by that talk, or what's going to be the biggest storyline? Obviously that, Joe Milton replacing all these guys. What's going to be the talk for Tennessee on Thursday when they get to the podium?
Well, I think that, from the outsiders that aren't a part of the program on a daily basis, they'll talk about, the NCAA resolution and all that. But I think there'll also be a lot of talk about how does Tennessee not make, the Orange Bowl, the end of the journey and just a stop, gap on the road trip, right? Like to have continuation of this and have some consistency and to be able to take 11-2 and turn around and do a 9-3 or 10-2. Again, in the regular season this year. I think that's, one of the big storylines. And then, I think you'll just hear Hype talk about, his upperclassmen because he does have a lot of them and he's going to have to rely on them, this year for Tennessee to not have that kind of regression in 2023 and continue on with what the 2022 team did.
And he'll do a fabulous job in 20 minutes at the podium of saying nothing.
Filibuster, baby. Read the roster. Roster.
For a guy as aggressive as he is on the field, he's the most unaggressive at the podium. It's aggressive in saying nothing. He takes pride in it too. I think he kind of enjoys going, all right, write something out of that. Good luck with that deal because, he's not gonna offer up a whole lot of stuff.
If I'm Bill Martin, I push Josh to walk up there and say in honor of Coach Leach, let's just go straight to the questions. And I think that'd be a nice thing. And as much talk as there's been about how he gave seven words last year compared to everybody else's 1,000 plus, that's what I would do.
Then you got 30 minutes, though. That's why, of course, it'd be nice. Of course, he won't do it, but you got 30 minutes of fielding questions. Grant, I think Joe Milton's is going to be the talk of, one of the big storylines. Obviously, quarterbacks dominate the conversation, but Media Days kicking off yesterday, going throughout the week. And, of course, Joe Milton won't get there till Thursday. But I think Joe Milton's going to be one of the most talked about players in the Southeastern Conference this week in Nashville.
For sure. I mean, how far did he throw the ball at the Manning Passing Academy? 81 yards or something? The fact that that's a number that's bouncing around in my head the week of SEC Media Days, I think that leads you to believe there's going to be a lot of questions about that. I mean, the way the guy carries himself, the smile on his face and the way he says all the right stuff and what people have seen from him in the clips and just how long he's been around in the college game. And yeah, that's going to be once the transition happens for people outside of the program or outside of the Knoxville media market, once they get over the NCAA stuff, it's going to go straight to Joe and replacing Hendon Hooker and how can this guy operate this offense and put up as many points as Hendon did and move as quickly as Hendon did and be as efficient with it and make the right reads and operate as quickly as you have to operate in this offense. So, once they do get past the NCAA stuff, it's going to go straight to Joe, and he's going to be everybody's focus in terms of because that's honestly the biggest question: how this program moves forward is how Joe moves them forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think Joe will be. I mean, Spencer Rattler. I mean, I guess people will ask him some questions, but there's a lot known. There's been a lot written about Spencer Rattler. Joe Milton is kind of the unknown. You look at that list of players who's there, who's going to be there. That's the guy the media wants to talk to, right? Is Joe Milton. I mean, no offense to anybody else, but I mean, he is this great unknown. Like, what is he? I mean, Grant, I think you said this on the podcast. I mean, he's built and looks like Cam Newton. He throws it a country mile. He lost his job and didn't get it back to a guy who was, now with the Lions. Like, there's a lot to dive into with Joe Milton, depending on how many layers Joe Milton wants to peel back. And so I think that he is going to be the most talked about guy or the most interviewed guy on that Thursday. And there's probably a few quarterbacks who are going to get asked over the next 3 days, can you throw a football 81 yards? Right? How far can you throw a football? We've seen Joe Milton do this. I mean, what do you think about that? I mean, he's going to be talked about a little bit in the days leading up to his arrival. And then Joe will get a goofy question like, how far can you throw a tomato or how far can you throw there'll be something like that, right? But I think Joe Milton's pretty fascinating because there's a lot of, we talked about this last week. There's a lot of hype, but who is he, Austin? I think that's still the question out there a lot of people have.
Yeah, Joe has this kind of like laid back, just kind of like Joe Cool, so to speak, demeanor about him. But I think, he's a pretty fascinating guy if you can peel back the layers. And it's just about getting to that point. But yeah, I think he'll be a hit at Media Days because he's got a big smile, a big personality. I'm sure that he's going to be coached between now and then about not saying things like I don't lose in the state of Florida and stuff like that, even though he's already said that. But he's going to have a big smile and a big personality. And when, I think another hit will be Amari Thomas because I think Amari Thomas is just going to handle himself a certain way. But there's no doubt the headliner's Joe. I think that he'll do a really, really nice job of, presenting Tennessee and Josh Heupel for the Tennessee contingent.
I think another thing with Joe is how unique of a story he is in college football right now because he'd already transferred when he got to Tennessee and he got here and he won the job and then he got hurt and then Hendon takes over and the expectation is he's probably going to leave and go somewhere else and find somewhere to play in 2022 and he sticks around and him and Hendon are best friends and roommates and study film together and all this stuff and Hendon gets hurt and Hendon helps Joe prepare for the Orange Bowl and all like that. Those storylines just there's not a lot of patience and waiting around and waiting your turn.
You're right about that.
Like we've seen from Joe and that's what I think a lot of media outlets look for are those kind of cool unique storylines of a guy that in the transfer portal era who had already transferred once, waited his turn after getting the starting job and after seeing the starting job go away and developing such a strong relationship with the guy he was directly competing with and watching that guy have so much success for 2 years and being his biggest cheerleader and being the guy that was meeting him on the sideline every time he came off the field and all that stuff. So I think that's another reason why the spotlight will be so bright on Joe this week.
And if Joe performs this fall, I said the other day, not only can talk about draft picks, but I mean, it'll be one of Josh Heupel's best coaching jobs to take him from where he was when he first got here to potentially a first round pick and a guy that, leads Tennessee to 9, 10, 11 wins, whatever it is this year. Again, if he plays well, that's what they're capable of. And if that happens, then, that combination right there will be just as impressive as, any for Josh Heupel during his career of coaching quarterbacks.
You got conference expansion, the expansion of the college football playoffs. You've got sports betting. You got a whole lot of the normal stuff that's going to be asked about and talked about with coaches and maybe even some players, because that's what we've been talking about the last couple of years, and certainly at the SEC spring meetings in Destin a couple months ago. Any other big storylines, not even necessarily Tennessee, but big storylines potentially we could see Brent or Austin or anybody this week coming out of Nashville leading up into the season?
Well, I think that's, where is governance of NIL, and how do you manage NIL, and what do you do with NIL? I mean, I think that you hear every coach talk about, you need some guardrails, you need some guardrails to NIL, but nobody has any idea what those guardrails should look like or how you should put them in place. So I still think there's going to be conversation about NIL. And I don't think that conversation is going away anytime soon. So I would throw that on there. I don't know that the one-time transfer is going to be that big of a topic, because the football window makes sense. It seems to be there's some things there that, it goes in football. It goes about as well as it's supposed to go, right? I mean, in terms of your timing and everything else. But I think the NIL conversation is always out there and always prevalent. And I think players will be asked about that this week, and coaches alike. So that's a topic that's always going to be there.
As we wrap up this conversation, any media day memories that stick out to you guys that were funny or just something that you haven't forgotten soon in your time covering media days over the years?
Yeah, some egghead at Volquest wrote a column about Tim Tebow in 2007. I don't know who that guy was, but he had no idea. He didn't know his audience very well at all. That was a lesson learned very quickly. Back then I covered it every day. And so, like the first time I covered it for Volquest, I sat down this is how it was different back then. I sat down with Deuce McAllister, who was a Heisman Trophy candidate, by the way. I got like a 15-minute one-on-one with Deuce McAllister sitting in a chair outside a room, and wrote that for Volquest. Not really sure why, but Tennessee wasn't there that day. I needed something to talk about. So Mike Strange and I had talked about enough media members and everybody else and Pirates and all kinds of stuff before Michael Leach got in the league. And so I didn't have anything else to do. So I wrote about Deuce McAllister, right? But, now you don't cover that. We cover your team, you cover the team and you get back out. So that one's there. The whole speakerphone deal, AP, with Phillip when he wasn't there because he had been subpoenaed and he did his stuff.
All the TV cameras pointed at a phone.
At a Charlie's Angels phone, is what it looked like sitting there. So that one, you had the whole deal. Did he get issued a subpoena the year before, and he said no, and he ended up yes, and I guess. And so, that was 2 years of Tennessee making news that had nothing to do with playing a football game. But, those are a couple that kind of stand out pretty quick.
Good morning, Angels.
That's what that phone looked like. Everybody's like laying their recorder next to the phone. TV cameras are like 30 minutes. All right, I got a good shot. Now to get a different.
And at that point, Phillip said, "God, we should just do this every year."
That's exactly right. He did it right outside Haywood Harris's old office there. That's now the body pod room, I guess, is what it used to be, or what it is now. But that one, that one was goofy. That one was certainly very different.
I remember a couple of years ago on Radio Row, the SID for Auburn, and this wasn't when it was really, really, really bad for Brian Harsin. Of course, this is before the season, but Brian Harsin still wasn't a very popular, coach in the SEC. And the SID, I guess, to do damage control or to show good faith. I don't know what it was. He literally took him to. I mean, there's like 35, booths on Radio Row or whatever, and he took them literally in a line down every booth and spent 1 minute at every booth. So you got in like one question, didn't even get to finish your thought or anything, and then he would say, all right, next one. and I thought it was the weirdest thing in the world. I thought it was the stupidest thing in the world as well. That's one that sticks out to me. I'm sure that we'll see a lot more this week as SEC Media Days are ongoing down in Nashville, Tennessee. Of course, Volquest and Tennessee is going to be down there on Thursday. What'd you say, Brent?
I say I could tell some stories that had nothing to do with the coverage of SEC Media Days that were some highlights, but it might incriminate.
I got time.
Incriminate some people.
I got
So
time. Go ahead.
I'm not going to talk about cars on curbs and everything else. So we'll leave that. We'll leave those stories for another day. That'll be from my memoir book later on in life, Grant Ramey.
Just remember, Hubs, next year we get this.
Grant Ramey's got a Media Day story as the Dallas theme player.
I do not. I haven't been around long enough for this.
Who shot JR, Ramey? Who shot JR? That's the real question.
My only Media Day memories are how quickly can you get back, how quickly can you get out of the building, and how quickly can you get back to the house.
Well, it depends on how long Cubs to stop at Buc-ee's is.
And that's a bummer because Tennessee's the last team to go this year.
I'm not stopping at Buc-ee's. Carthage, Dunkin' Donut, and then we're rolling.
Hey, my hot take, Buc-ee's. It's overrated. Like if I have to stop for gas, 100%, it's cheaper, I'll go there. But the people that I know that literally drive to Crossville or now will drive to 407 just to go up there and get some brisket or whatever, I just shake my head.
It's not worth getting in that mess. I had to do it a couple weeks ago because I actually did need some gas on the way back from road trip.
You got to stop 100%. That's the best place to go. But like making it a destination, no.
Listen,
we got plenty of stuff over at the site this week. Volquest.com. SEC Media Days rolling on. We got tons of recruiting.
Grant's got one. Go
Come
ahead.
on, Grant, speak up.
Next year, the down and back tradition, we'll just rent an RV. We'll have 5 people in it, so we can just alternate drivers. We'll wrap that thing in Volquest decals and just ride it down the road and cover it and come on straight back. And we'll just alternate.
I need Rob Lewis's face on the back.
Down and back day trip with Rob driving. Can you see that thing being top heavy and us swaying?
Will we have a lead car? Will we have a lead car called Bandit One making that trip down and back? Is the question. Or better yet, do we land and rent a car with some horns on the hood?
I'm gonna start calling Rob Snowman.